The first time Commander Zureel saw the creature, it was dragging a steel beam twice its length across the loading bay of the Aloran research vessel Kyrth. The beam screeched, sending sparks across the floor, and every Aloran technician in the vicinity dove for cover. Zureel, perched behind a reinforced viewport, narrowed his 3 pupil-lined eyes. "Why is it unsupervised?" he asked, voice laced with alarm. Beside him, a human in grease-stained cargo pants and a faded navy t-shirt chewed on a strip of dried meat. The human's name was Warren Hale, an Earth engineer assigned to the joint project. He watched the creature with casual detachment, arms crossed over his chest. "He's just being playful," Warren said. Zureel turned to him, utterly baffled. "That thing just bent a titanium support beam into a spiral," Warren shrugged. "Yeah, that's kind of his thing." The creature officially designated Specimen 1147, unofficially named Chomper, by the humans paused in its destruction to gnaw on the corner of a storage crate. Its 6 limbs flexed with wiry muscle, and its eyes darted around the bay with a kind of manic glee. It looked like someone had taken a bear, a spider, and a junkyard compactor, and stitched them together during a power outage. Zureel pressed a hand to his chest, trying to slow his pulse. "You have no containment field on it. Why is it not secured?" "Because he doesn't like containment fields," Warren replied. "That's not a valid reason." Chomper dropped the crate and bounded toward the viewport, smashing into the glass with a boom that rattled the frame. Zureel recoiled. Warren didn't flinch. The creature panted, tongue lolling, then scampered off in pursuit of a loose hover crate. Zureel turned on Warren. "You're telling me that thing is safe?" "Safe might be a stretch, but he's not dangerous." "Not unless you startle him or try to take his toy." Zureel blinked slowly. "We have over 200 crew on this vessel." "And not a single fatality," Warren pointed out. "He's been with us 3 months. Closest thing to an injury was when Lieutenant Vest tried to take back a power cell. Ended up with a bruised ego and a torn glove. And the melted door frame last week," he was excited. "We got a new shipment of parts from Earth." Zureel stared through the glass. Excited. He didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, the incident happened. It began in the hydroponics lab. Chomper had apparently decided that the nutrient gel tanks were a suitable napping spot. When biologist Renix entered to check the tomato cultures, he found the creature submerged up to its neck in green gel, humming tunelessly. Chomper, startled, let out a high-pitched warble and launched himself toward the ceiling. He ripped out 2 light fixtures in the process, then bolted through the lab's rear access tunnel. Renix hit the alarm. Warren was in the propulsion bay when the siren started. He dropped his wrench, muttered "oh no," and sprinted for the central corridor. He intercepted Chomper just outside the reactor vestibule where 3 Aloran guards had formed a shaky perimeter. The creature was crouched low, breathing heavy, sides heaving. Its pupils were dilated and its rear limbs twitched. "Everybody hold still," Warren said, holding up both hands. One of the guards raised his shock baton. "Don't too late." The baton buzzed. The guard took a half step forward. Chomper exploded into motion. Warren threw himself sideways as the creature barreled through the guards like a wrecking ball. It didn't attack, it just knocked them over like bowling pins. Then it skidded to a stop in front of Warren, chest heaving, and collapsed at his feet. Warren knelt cautiously. "Hey, buddy." "You okay?" Chomper whined and buried its face in his shirt. Zureel arrived moments later, flanked by security personnel and a medic. His entire posture screamed apprehension. Warren looked up. "He's just being playful." Zureel blinked. "He assaulted 3 officers. He didn't mean to." "He was scared. He tore through a titanium door." Warren shrugged. "Titanium's never been much of a challenge for him." Zureel exhaled slowly and turned to the medic. "Check the guards." Warren sat there, stroking the creature's head as the security team stood frozen around him. Chomper whimpered softly but didn't move. The next day, Warren was summoned to the command chamber. Zureel paced in front of the central console, arms folded behind his back. "We are transferring the creature to the secondary outpost on Drelas 9, he announced. Warren's stomach dropped. You can't do that. I can and I will. It is ill-suited for a vessel of this size. He'll panic without familiar handlers. Zureel turned slowly. Then you will accompany him. Warren opened his mouth, then closed it again. Finally, he nodded. The transfer took place at dawn. Chomper was loaded into a reinforced cargo pod, though Warren insisted on riding inside with him. The pilot, a short, jittery Aloran named Crix, refused to make eye contact with the creature. The flight took 4 hours. Chomper slept most of the way, curled around Warren's legs like an oversized dog. When they landed on Drelas Nine, the atmosphere was thick with mist, and the trees grew in spirals. The research outpost was small, less than 30 personnel, and no one had been warned about the arrival of a living battering ram. The moment the pod opened, Chomper bounded out, sniffed a bush, and then leapt onto the roof of the supply shed. A technician screamed. Warren climbed out behind him. He's just being playful. But by then, 3 researchers had locked themselves inside the mess hall, and one was halfway up a communications mast. The next few days were chaos. Chomper dug up half the botanical samples, chewed through a weather sensor, and managed to terrify the local fauna into migrating 2 kilometers north. Warren did his best to calm nerves, but the base commander, a pale-skinned Varric named Solon, was unconvinced. He is a liability, Solon said flatly. If he remains here, we will lose funding and possibly limbs. Give him time, Warren pleaded. He's adjusting. You said that yesterday and the day before. He destroyed our water recycling unit. He thought the gurgling was a threat. Solon stared at him. The gurgling, Warren sighed. He wasn't sleeping much. Chomper had taken to pacing at night, unsettled in the unfamiliar environment. Warren had bruises under his eyes and a growing tension in his shoulders. But then, during a routine mineral survey, things changed. Warren was with a team 2 kilometers from the outpost, collecting core samples. Chomper had insisted on tagging along, dragging a broken antenna behind him like a favorite chew toy. The survey was going fine until the ground trembled. Solon's voice cracked over the comm. Warren, you need to evacuate. Now. A seismic disturbance had triggered an underground gas pocket. The resulting rupture split the ground wide open. One of the researchers fell in. Warren didn't think he ran. He skidded to the edge of the fissure and saw the woman clinging to a jagged root, legs dangling over the void. Hang on, he shouted. The root shifted. Chomper appeared beside him, head tilted. Warren pointed. Down there, without hesitation, Chomper leapt. Warren shouted, but the creature had already plunged into the fissure. There was a moment of silence, then the ground shook again. Dust billowed. A low growl echoed from below. Seconds passed. Then Chomper emerged, the researcher clutched gently in his front arms. He climbed the vertical wall like it was flat ground, jaws clenched, eyes focused. Warren helped pull her free as Chomper reached the top. The woman was pale, trembling, but uninjured. The rescue changed everything. Solon called a meeting. The researchers, still wary, listened as Warren recounted the event. He didn't hesitate, Warren said. He knew what to do. He understood. Solon looked at Chomper, who was curled up in a corner gnawing on a rock. He is unconventional. He's also loyal and capable. He just needs patience. There was silence for a long while. Then Solon nodded. Over the next 2 weeks, things slowly improved. Chomper was assigned tasks fetching equipment, clearing debris, even transporting supplies. He took to the jobs with childlike enthusiasm. The researchers began to relax. A few even laughed. One night, as the twin moons of Drelas Nine rose over the horizon, Zureel called via long-range comm. How is the situation? Warren leaned back on a crate, Chomper curled beside him. He's just being playful, Warren said, but we're getting there. Zureel was quiet, then at last he said, Very well, report again in 3 days. The screen went dark. Warren looked down at the creature beside him and smiled. Good job, buddy. By the 3rd week, Chomper had become an unofficial fixture of the Drelas Nine outpost, though fixture was perhaps generous. He'd eaten 2 external floodlights, and spent nearly an hour trying to outstare a ventilation drone. But the incident in the fissure had shifted the crew's tolerance to something closer to guarded acceptance. Solon sat at the operations console, antennae angled back as he watched the external feed of Chomper dragging a broken supply sled across the mud-slicked landing platform. "He's using his tongue to steer," Solon muttered. Warren, seated nearby with a half-wrapped sandwich in one hand and a diagnostic pad in the other, didn't look up. Better than the rover. That thing's been listing left since the storm. He could cause a fuel rupture. He could also tow a disabled skimmer uphill with his back legs. "Want to guess which one he did yesterday?" Solon didn't answer. The outpost's lights flickered once common enough on Drelas Nine, where the weather alternated between corrosive drizzle and electromagnetic tantrums, but it still made him flinch. Warren glanced up. "You really think he'd wreck the place on purpose?" "I think he doesn't grasp consequences." "No, he just doesn't grasp ours." Outside, Chomper dropped the sled and bounded toward the main hatch, flattening himself comically against the pressure door as it cycled open. A startled Enith technician leapt aside, clutching a crate of data cores. "Maybe we should teach him to knock," Warren muttered. "He'd chew the panel," Solon said. Chomper skidded into the common area, trailing streaks of damp soil across the floor. Warren watched him pause, sniff the air, then march straight toward the storage room. Solon stood. "What is he doing now?" Smelled dried fruit. "He's obsessed with it. I think it reminds him of insulation foam." They followed at a distance. The storage room was dim and narrow, with ceiling racks packed tight with supplies. Chomper had already wedged himself into a corner, tail thumping against a box of oxygen cartridges. "Chomper," Warren said carefully, "those aren't snacks." The creature's head whipped around. He froze, eyes wide, one clawed hand inches from a sealed foil packet. Solon took half a step back. Warren held out a hand. "Come on, I'll get you the actual fruit strips. These are emergency rations. Eat those and you'll be making neon deposits for a week." Chomper blinked slowly, then slunk out, brushing past Solon with a low, apologetic chirp. Solon exhaled once he was gone. How did that thing survive in the wild? Probably terrified everything else into relocation. Warren ducked into the supply closet, pulled out a smaller crate, and tossed a bundle of dried orange wedges into the hallway. Chomper caught them mid-air and retreated to a corner, tail coiling neatly around his feet. Solon tapped his pad. "We have a visitor arriving from the Central Science Division tomorrow, Supervisor Latari. She'll be conducting a systems audit." Warren's chewing slowed. "She knows about Chomper," she was briefed. "She may not be receptive. She's the one who tried to outlaw caffeine dispensers on orbital labs." "The same," Warren groaned. "She's going to hate this." "On the contrary," Solon said, "she may love it. Just not in the way you hope." The next morning arrived with a stiff wind that rattled every window panel in the outpost. Supervisor Latari disembarked from a sleek silver shuttle precisely on time, her pale robes unblemished by the gusts. She surveyed the landing pad with the expression of someone inspecting a crime scene. Warren met her at the airlock, Chomper nowhere in sight. Latari's eyes narrowed. "You're the human handler, engineer, but yeah, I see, and the creature? Somewhere. Probably reorganizing the storage room again." Latari's nostrils flared slightly. "I will be inspecting all critical systems. I expect full compliance. I'll keep Chomper out of the way." That promise lasted less than 10 minutes. They were halfway through the lab wing when Chomper reappeared, this time with a length of cable dangling from his jaw and a pair of protective goggles perched askew on his head. He bumped into Latari's leg and dropped the cable at her feet like a cat offering a lizard. She did not react favorably. "What is this?" she asked, not moving. "He's helping," Warren said. "Those were from the damaged comm relay. He's been gathering parts on his own. He is unsanctioned and unregulated. He also reassembled a pressure valve last week without instructions." Latari turned to Solon, who had joined them at the rear of the group. "You've allowed this?" Solin's antennae twitched. We've adapted, Latari pursed her lips. Adaptation is not a substitute for safety. Chomper let out a low, confused trill. Warren crouched beside him. I know, buddy, she's not mad at you. Latari stepped back. That thing is a liability. Warren stood slowly. He saved one of your researchers 3 weeks ago, hauled her out of a fissure with no harness. Latari raised a brow. Anecdotes don't justify risk. I want it confined. Warren's jaw tightened. He doesn't do well with confinement. Then you'll need to make him. No, Latari's gaze sharpened. That sounded like insubordination. It was a boundary. The silence stretched, broken only by the soft click-click of Chomper's claws on the floor. Solin cleared his throat. Supervisor, perhaps a demonstration would be useful. We've been assessing the creature's capacity for directed tasks. Latari folded her arms. Fine, show me. They convened in the maintenance bay, where a collapsed antenna array had been laid out for calibration. Chomper trotted alongside Warren, eyes bright. Chomp, Warren said, tapping the base of the panel. Anchor bolts here. Chomper rotated his head once, then dove into the pile of parts. Within minutes, he was sorting components by size and shape, using 2 limbs to hold the base while aligning the mount with another. The Aloran technician assigned to the task simply stepped back and watched. Latari observed in silence. After 20 minutes, the array was upright, recalibrated, and transmitting. He's not just playful, Warren said. He's brilliant in his own way. Latari didn't respond immediately. Her fingers hovered over her datapad. Finally, she said, his presence violates at least 6 interspecies containment protocols. I'm aware. But you've also achieved a 72% increase in task efficiency in his assigned zones. I didn't realize someone was measuring that. I always measure. She turned on her heel and left the room. Later that evening, Warren found Solin watching the external monitors again. Chomper was curled near the perimeter fence, watching a distant lightning storm roll across the horizon. She's not having him transferred, Solin said without looking up. Warren leaned against the console. What changed? She requested his neural scan logs and asked if we'd trial a simulation module. Warren blinked. You're joking. I never joke. A burst of static crackled across the speaker. Chomper perked up, then bounded off toward the power station. Solin sighed. I'll go after him. I'll do it. He likes when I bring the wrench. Warren grabbed the oversized tool from the wall peg and headed out into the wind. He found Chomper perched on the edge of the station roof, staring at the flickering conduit that had shorted out during the storm. The creature looked back at him, tail twitching. Let's fix it before anyone notices, Warren said. Chomper chirped once, then leapt down beside him. They worked in silence, lit only by the intermittent flashes of lightning. By the time they finished, the generator hummed steady again. Chomper nudged Warren's leg and licked his arm once, then wandered off into the twilight. Warren watched him go, then turned back toward the outpost. The floodlights buzzed to life behind him. The first signs were subtle. Chomper stopped playing with the empty coolant drums he usually rolled around the landing pad. And when Warren offered him one of the high-vis signal flags he used to love shredding, Chomper sniffed it and walked away. By the following evening, he was curled in the corner of the maintenance bay, twitching in his sleep, his breathing shallow. Warren sat beside him, legs folded, cradling a diagnostics tablet that displayed increasingly erratic biostats. He's overheating, Warren muttered, glancing over the readings for the 5th time, but his core temperature's dropping. That doesn't make sense. Solin stood near the doorway, arms folded, watching closely. We don't have a baseline for his species. There's no standardized threshold for what qualifies as critical. Yeah, but I've seen him chew through a broken plasma igniter and walk away with glowing teeth. This isn't just fatigue. Chomper let out a low, vibrating noise, not quite a growl, not quite a groan. Warren lowered the tablet. We need to run a full toxin panel. He was hauling salvage from the chemical runoff basin 2 days ago. I didn't think he'd actually ingest anything. Solin tapped into the outpost's internal comms. Tarn, prep the med chamber. We're bringing him in. By the time they reached the lab, Chomper had gone limp. Not unconscious, his eyes still flicked back and forth but unresponsive. That wasn't like him. Tarn, the outpost's resident medical analyst, was a lanky chirl with translucent skin and a tendency to narrate his thoughts out loud. I'm not sure what to sedate him with. He metabolizes nearly everything faster than I can inject it. Don't sedate, Warren said. Just give him a controlled environment. Keep the air steady, reduce ambient light. He gets overstimulated when he's disoriented. Tarn adjusted the chamber controls. He's not regulating his blood chemistry. I don't know what normal is for him, but these levels are inconsistent with any mammalian or reptilian biology I've studied. He's not either, Warren said. He's something else. We ran DNA sequencing months ago. The strands loop back on themselves. It's like someone spliced a nervous system around a power grid. Solon raised a brow. And yet you let him sleep under your bunk. He snores like a turbine. You can't not notice if something's wrong. Chomper stirred inside the chamber, claws scraping lightly against the interior wall. Warren pressed a palm to the glass. Hey, you're okay. Tarn adjusted a few more parameters. We can't treat what we don't understand. Then we learn faster. The next 3 hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the whir of the diagnostic scanners and occasional muttered frustration from Tarn. Chomper's vitals fluctuated wildly. At one point, his heart rate quadrupled, then dropped so suddenly the alarms chirped in confusion. Warren refused to leave. He paced the lab, biting the inside of his cheek, answering questions as Tarn rattled off data points. What was the last thing he ate? Half a crate of dehydrated legumes and a flashlight. He didn't chew the lens this time. Has he been exposed to any new environmental stimuli? Just one of the drone calibration arrays. He sat on it for an hour. I think he liked the hum. Tarn adjusted the internal temperature of the med chamber. This isn't a poisoning, it's a reaction to something sustained, ongoing exposure, maybe neurological. Solon leaned over the console. Environmental pressure, Tarn frowned. Could be. This planet's magnetic field fluctuates in unpredictable cycles. If Chomper's body relies on consistent electrical impedance to maintain organ function, English, Warren said. Tarn rubbed his forehead. If his biology runs like a giant battery and the planet keeps shorting it out, that might be why he's shutting down. Warren exhaled sharply. So we insulate him. Build a chamber that shields him from EM flux. We'd need to modify the sensor housing from the old comms tower. I'll get it. Warren was out the door before either of them could argue. It took nearly 30 minutes to disassemble the upper shell of the comms unit. The latter was corroded and the wind picked up halfway through, but Warren managed to haul the panel down without shattering anything vital. His fingers were blistered by the time he returned. His jumpsuit streaked with rust and oil. Tarn and Solon were still in the lab. Chomper hadn't moved. Warren handed the panel over. It's ferrite-coated, should block low-frequency interference. Good, Tarn said, already fitting it over the chamber. We'll reroute the filter array through this. If we're right, we should see a response in the next 10 minutes. 8 minutes later, Chomper shifted. His limbs twitched first, then stretched. His breathing evened out. The internal scanner lights flicked from yellow to green. Warren pressed both hands to the glass. Come on, buddy. Wake up. Chomper blinked once, then again. His gaze locked on Warren and he let out a quiet wheeze that sounded suspiciously like a sneeze. Solon turned to Tarn. Is that a good sign? It's not a bad one. Warren laughed once, sharp and relieved. He hates dust. That sneeze means he's annoyed. That means he's back. Chomper rolled onto his back, claws twitching. Tarn deactivated the chamber's restraints. We'll keep him under observation for another cycle. Let his system recalibrate. Warren nodded but didn't move from his spot. 3 hours later, Chomper was upright, though sluggish. He refused food but accepted a strip of fabric from Warren's sleeve and chewed it methodically. Tarn ran a few more scans, then stepped back. I think he'll stabilize, But he's not built for this planet. Warren folded his arms. So we either adjust the outpost or relocate. Solon looked tired. Neither option is ideal. We don't always get ideal, Warren said. We get what we can make work. By the next day, the outpost's engineering team, mostly Virelians with compound eyes and no concept of ergonomic design, had begun constructing a portable shielding unit. Chomper followed them around, occasionally plucking tools from their belts and handing them back upside down. Warren stayed close, monitoring his behavior. The twitchiness was gone. No more pacing or erratic movements. But Chomper's eyes lingered longer on shadows now, like he was watching for a recurrence of something his instincts couldn't name. Latari returned via shuttle late that afternoon. She stepped off the ramp, eyes scanning the camp. Solon met her at the entrance. He recovered. She nodded once. I read the logs. Impressive improvisation. Warren was crouched near the shielding rig adjusting a power relay. He didn't look up as she approached. Latari stopped beside him. You risked permanent neural damage attempting that retrofit. Wasn't much of a choice. There's always a choice. Not when it's someone who trusts you to fix things. Chomper padded over, bumped his head against Warren's shoulder, then flopped down beside the relay box. Latari watched them. You've turned a potentially volatile anomaly into a functioning member of your crew. Wasn't just me. He figured most of it out on his own. She tilted her head. I've submitted a report to Central. They'll be adjusting species classification protocols. He's no longer listed as a containment hazard. Warren looked up. That means he can stay, for now, under strict observation. Chomper let out a low trill that sounded suspiciously like a yawn. Latari walked away without another word. Solon stood beside Warren a moment later. You realize the Central Council now considers him a Category 6 cooperative entity. That sounds made up. Oh, it is, but it means they won't relocate him. Warren leaned back, staring at the pale sky. Good. Chomper rolled onto his side and began gnawing on the relay cable. Warren reached over and pulled it free. Not that one. Chomper blinked, then nudged him with his head. Solon watched the exchange, antennae angled back thoughtfully. You humans form attachments strangely fast. Maybe. But we don't let go easy. That evening, the shielding unit was activated and installed near the edge of the camp. Chomper curled inside it, body relaxed, eyes half-lidded. The lights hummed softly, a steady pulse in the darkening dusk. Warren sat just outside, eating a reheated ration pack and watching the last of the storm clouds drift west. Solon joined him, holding a data slate. No active anomalies in his readings. You stabilized him. Not just me. Solon considered that. You're right. He chose to adapt. He chose to trust. Warren smiled faintly. He's just being himself. No, Solon said. He's being more than that. He's being one of us. Inside the shielding unit, Chomper sneezed again, then curled tighter. Warren leaned back against the fence. He's gonna hate the dust forever, isn't he? Without question. And for the first time in weeks, the outpost felt still, not quiet, never truly quiet with Chomper nearby, but balanced in a way that didn't require caution. Everything that had needed fixing was fixed. And for once, that was enough.